Today, we're going to talk about a profound shift in the very logic of our international system. According to the analysis we're looking at, we're moving away from an order that was based on established rules and toward a very stark new reality, one that's defined by a single, powerful concept.
Now, this phrase, it's important to understand that the analysis we're exploring presents this not as some emotional judgment or a political stance. It's framed as a calm, realistic description of a new era that's already upon us. So, what exactly does it mean to rebalance interests using force?
Well, let's break this down. The pattern of interests isn't just about money or trade deals. Think of it as the entire global chessboard. It's about who controls the resources, the energy, the financial pipelines, those crucial spots in the supply chain, and maybe most critically, who gets to write the rules for everyone else. And here's the core historical argument. When that grand pattern gets so out of balance that diplomacy and our existing institutions just can't fix it anymore, history shows us, time and again, that an older, more decisive tool reemerges, and that tool is military force. This idea really sets the stage for two pivotal moments in this new era. The analyses we're examining points to two key events that really signal this irreversible shift. They happened. So the first turning point is Russia's invasion of Ukraine back in February 2022. This is seen as the moment this trend burst out into the open. The second is set in January 2026, a U.S. military action in Venezuela. This event signaled America's shift from being a rule enforcer to an active participant in this new game. Let's focus on that first event. The argument isn't that this whole trend just started out of nowhere in 2022. Things like de-globalization, anxiety over energy supplies, and major power competition, they were all simmering for a while, but the invasion of Ukraine brought it all out into the open in a way that just couldn't be ignored anymore. And the consequences were immediate, and they were systemic. You had Europe's entire energy map being forcibly redrawn. The prices of food and raw materials around the world were reset. International capital, it started to fundamentally rethink political risk. And maybe most importantly, raw military power was suddenly back at the very center of how nations define security. So the takeaway here is crucial. The war in Ukraine was essentially a global announcement. It declared that the era of trying to balance global interests mainly through institutions and international law, well, that era was over. Force was once again the ultimate arbiter. Okay, now let's turn to that second turning point. This U.S. action in 2026 is so significant because it would represent America making a choice to no longer just be the umpire of the old system, but to become a player, an active participant in rebalancing interests through its own use of force. The potential impact of a scenario like this would be absolutely profound. First, it would challenge the bedrock principle of national sovereignty. Second, it's a direct, forceful intervention to control world-class energy reserves. And third, it would send an unmistakable signal to the rest of the world that America is willing and able to use force to get what it wants when other means have failed. And this, of course, leads to a critical question. Why? Why would a power like the United States even choose to join this trend? The analysis suggests this wouldn't be an emotional choice, but a calculated, rational one. The argument is that this kind of decision, if it were ever to happen, wouldn't be impulsive. It would be a cold judgment based on the new realities of the global landscape. It's framed as a response to an existing situation, not the cause of one. So what is the strategic logic here? The analysis really lays it out in 3 steps. First, the trend is already irreversible. The war in Ukraine proved that. Second, the U.S. still holds a first-mover advantage with its military, giving it the power to shape outcomes. And third, the alternative is to sit back, be passive, and just let other powers dictate the new rules of the world.
And this one sentence really encapsulates the entire strategic calculation. As the analysis puts it, since rebalancing interests through force can no longer be stopped, it is better to lead it yourself.
So, if this analysis holds true, what does this new world order actually look like? What are the real, broader consequences for all of us? Well, the hallmarks of this new era are pretty stark. Power, not rules, becomes the final court of appeal. The security of your investments and your supply chains becomes completely intertwined with military security. Where capital flows and where factories get built, that's going to depend more on geopolitics than on market logic. And for smaller nations, the world becomes a much, much more dangerous place. What's crucial to understand is that the analysis argues this isn't a future that any single country chose. Instead, it's presented as the inevitable outcome of a deep structural change in the international system itself. So, to bring it all together, Russia's invasion took this process that was simmering under the surface and made it public, made it undeniable. Action by the US, like the one described, would then signal its formal, active entry into this new reality. The sheer gravity of this shift is captured in one final thought from the analysis. When the pattern of interests can only be rebalanced by force, the operating logic of the old world has reached its end.
And so we're left with a very direct and very provocative question. In a world where force is becoming the norm for rebalancing interests, every nation, every market, and every individual will be forced to adapt. The only question is, are you ready?